I am Elias. I speak now to the heart that feels abandoned, to the soul that has cried out into the night and heard nothing answer back. I speak to the one who kneels with empty hands, who has watched the door of heaven and seen only stillness, who has wondered in the secret places of the heart if the love of God has grown distant or tired or cold. If you have ever whispered a prayer and felt it fall like a stone into deep water, if you have ever pressed your forehead against the silence and heard only your own fragile breathing, then I am with you now, and I will not turn away. There is a kind of pain that has no visible wound. It does not bleed on the surface, yet it can feel like a slow breaking beneath the ribs, a quiet shattering of certainties. It comes when every word of prayer seems to dissolve into the air, when the name of God feels heavy on the tongue, when ancient promises seem to hang above you like distant stars you cannot touch. This is the ache of the silent God, the time when heaven seems to close its windows and the soul stands outside in the cold, waiting, shivering, trying not to lose hope. I have known that silence. I have stretched out my hands in the dark and touched nothing, no sign, no answer, no gentle reassurance that I was seen. I have walked through days that felt like stone corridors, my footsteps echoing back to me as though I were the only one alive within them. I have watched others speak of miracles and consolations, while my own heart felt like a dry riverbed, scattered with the stones of old prayers that never seemed to move. I have known the feeling of sitting before a hidden God and wondering if I was simply speaking to the shadows on the wall. If that is where you are now, hear me. You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are not less loved than those who live in bright consolation. There is a mystery at work in the silence, a deep and hidden labor in the soul that is often closest to God precisely when the senses feel most abandoned. The silence is not a wall. It is a veil. It is not the absence of God. It is the way God draws near in a manner too deep for sound. We are accustomed to voices, to signs, to a faith that feels like fire in the veins and music in the bones. We long for visions and for answers that arrive like lightning, clear and impressive, impossible to ignore. We imagine that love must always speak aloud, must always comfort, must always explain. And when heaven is quiet, we suspect that something has gone wrong, that our prayers are defective or our hearts unworthy, that perhaps the heart of God has turned away. Yet the history of the soul is written in seasons, and not all seasons are spring. There are winters of the spirit in which the fields of the heart appear barren, stripped of leaves and song. The sky of prayer feels dull and snowbound, and nothing seems to grow. You look at your own faith and you see no blossoms, no sweet fruits, only the stark lines of branches against the indifferent sky. In those moments you may say, God has left me. But listen carefully within that winter stillness. Beneath the frozen earth, the roots are alive. Beneath the numbness, something is happening that cannot yet be seen. The sap is gathering strength. The silence is not death, it is gestation. When God seems silent, the soul is invited into a deeper listening. There is a point at which words must fall away, not because they are bad, but because they are small. They cannot contain the vastness of the divine work unfolding in secret. If God answered every prayer with quick comfort and immediate clarity, we might never learn to desire God for God's own sake. We would cling to gifts and forget the giver. We would come to prayer only to feel better, not to be transformed. So sometimes God withdraws the sweetness but not the presence, the feeling but not the love. It is in those hidden hours that the soul learns what trust truly means. Trust is not a sentiment or a mood. It is not the easy confidence that comes when everything feels radiant and sure. True trust is born when you continue to lean your weight on God even when your heart feels nothing, sees nothing, understands nothing. It is the decision to remain, to stay in the place of prayer, to keep showing up before the tabernacle of the unseen, to whisper still the ancient names of hope, even when the only response you hear is your own trembling voice. I have sat in chapels where the air felt heavy and still, where every candle seemed to burn without warmth. I have watched the quiet presence on the altar and felt not awe but a kind of aching emptiness. And yet something in me knelt and stayed. It stayed because beneath the silence, a gentle conviction pulsed like a heartbeat. It said, God is greater than my feelings. God is not undone by my dryness. God is here, working in a way my senses cannot yet register. And so I remained, and you can remain too, even if your soul feels like a hollowed-out shell. In that staying, something begins to change. It is rarely sudden. There is no dramatic tearing of the heavens, no roar of divine speech that answers every question. Instead, the change is subtle, like dawn reaching into a room through a narrow window. You may not even notice it at first, but slowly you realize that your faith is less dependent on consolations. You are no longer praying merely for comfort but for communion. You are less concerned with hearing your own voice echoed back, and more willing to let the mystery be what it is, vast and sovereign and tender in ways you cannot map. The silence of God teaches the soul to love in a new way. In the early days of prayer, we are like children reaching for the hand of a parent. We want to be held, soothed, reassured at every step. There is beauty in that. God delights in that. But as the soul matures, the call changes. Love invites us to walk even when we cannot feel the hand that guides us. The silent seasons are not punishment. They are invitations to a braver love. A love that believes even when it cannot see. A love that adores even when it cannot taste sweetness. A love that offers itself even when it feels nothing in return. Yet you may say, if God is love, why allow this darkness at all? Why not speak clearly and spare the heart so much confusion? I do not pretend to hold the full answer to that question. I am a pilgrim like you, walking by a light that often seems dim. But I have glimpsed something of the wisdom of this silence. It is in the wordless nights of the soul that we become more honest, more stripped, more real. When the noise of spiritual excitement fades, we begin to see what is truly in our hearts. We see the hidden bargains we tried to make with God. We see the subtle pride, the hunger not only for God but for spiritual pleasure, for proof that we are holy or chosen or special. In the silence, those illusions are gently but firmly burned away. It is painful. There are moments when you feel as though you are losing even the little faith you thought you possessed. But what is actually dying is not faith itself, but the false ideas and expectations that clung to it like shadows. God's apparent distance purifies our love. It teaches us to seek the face of God rather than the emotions of the moment. It teaches us to keep walking even when the road disappears into fog. To rest not in our perception of the divine, but in the divine reality that transcends understanding. In this hidden work, we are not alone. There is a motherly presence that moves through the silence, like a soft and steady breath. She knows what it is to stand beneath a darkened sky and feel the weight of apparent defeat. She knows what it is to cradle promises that seem shattered, to hold the lifeless body of hope, and yet somehow continue to trust. In the silence of your nights, she stands beside you. You may not see her, but her gaze is on you, tender and unwavering. She does not always speak, because sometimes words would only disturb the delicate labor of grace within you. Instead, she wraps you in the same quiet trust with which she once stood at the foot of a cross and waited for dawn she could not yet see. When you feel that heaven is silent, you can lean into her silence too. It is not an empty quiet, but a womb-like stillness, full of hidden life. Her heart has walked the narrow corridors of holy darkness. She has known the sword that pierces the soul. She has watched the apparent triumph of death and yet did not surrender to despair. In your own darkness, she is there, not as a distant icon, but as a living companion. She joins her stillness to yours and helps you bear the weight of unanswered questions. In her presence, your tears are not wasted. They water the hidden garden of grace that God is cultivating in the depths of your being. The saints, too, move through this silence with you. They are not remote statues in unreachable sanctuaries. They are brothers and sisters who have crossed their own deserts, who have tasted their own nights of spiritual abandonment. Many of them lived long stretches of life in which God seemed distant, in which prayer felt sterile and empty. They know the slow, burning anguish of kneeling day after day without consolation. They know the temptation to give up, to turn away, to seek easier comforts. And yet they remained, not because they were strong, but because grace held them in ways they did not even feel. Now they stand within the radiance of the unveiled presence of God, and from that vantage point, they intercede. You might not sense them, yet they surround you like a great cloud of gentle witnesses. When your own voice grows weak, theirs does not. When you fall silent because you can no longer find words, they take up the intention of your heart and carry it to the throne of mercy. You are not praying alone. Every sigh, every tired act of faith, every fragile yes whispered into the dark is echoed and amplified by their love. Together with them, you form a hidden liturgy, a chorus of quiet trust rising from earth to heaven. There is another mystery at work in the silence. It is the mystery of the cross, not as an idea, but as a lived reality in your soul. The cross is not only a distant event, it is a pattern that repeats itself in countless lives. When God is silent, you are drawn into that pattern in a more intimate way. You share in the feeling of abandonment that once poured from the crucified heart. You taste in your own small way the question of where the Father has gone. Yet even in that cry, there remained a trust deeper than feeling, a surrender more profound than any human despair. When your prayer feels like that wounded cry, you are closer to the heart of redemption than you realize. You are not outside the story of salvation, but woven into its very center. God does some of the most powerful work in the soul when all outer proofs of divine presence are withdrawn. Like metal in the furnace, the heart is softened and shaped. Like grain ground in the mill, the self is broken open so that it can become bread for others. The silence is not an empty pause in your spiritual life. It is the hidden workshop of God. Often the fruits of this hidden work do not show themselves quickly. You may walk for a long time without seeing much change. Yet slowly, almost imperceptibly, you become more compassionate, more able to sit with the suffering of others without needing to fix it or explain it away. You become gentler toward your own weaknesses, less shocked by your own poverty, more aware that everything is a gift. You begin to love God not only in light but also in shadow, not only on the mountaintop but also in the valley where no trumpet sounds your progress. Hope in such seasons becomes something different than optimism. Optimism is the expectation that things will soon improve according to your own measure. Hope is the quiet courage that anchors itself in God even when the outward signs suggest nothing at all will change. Hope says, I do not see the path, but I know the guide. I do not feel the embrace, but I know I am held. I do not hear the answer, but I know my cry has been received. This hope is often fragile. It may flicker like a small candle in a vast dark room. Yet a small candle is enough to declare that the darkness does not have the final word. Prayer too takes on a different shape in the silence. It becomes less about speaking and more about being. Sometimes all you can offer is your presence, your simple willingness to sit before God with no words, no plans, no spiritual performance. You bring your confusion, your boredom, your irritation, your numbness, and you simply remain. That remaining is itself a deep act of love. It says, "Even if I gain nothing that I can feel or measure, I want to be here with you." It is a way of letting God be God, of refusing to reduce the divine to a dispenser of spiritual sensations. In time, this silent prayer refashions the heart. It widens your capacity to receive God in ways beyond emotion. It teaches you to notice the quiet movements of grace in daily life, the small kindness of a stranger, the unexpected strength to endure one more day, the sudden moment of peace that arrives for no apparent reason. You begin to recognize that God has been speaking all along, not in thunder, but in subtle currents that were easy to miss when you were looking only for dramatic signs. There is a hidden companionship that grows in these seasons. You may feel more alone than ever, yet at a level deeper than feeling the roots of your soul are entwining themselves with the heart of Christ. You learn to stay where He stays, even when that place is dark and seemingly forsaken. You discover that true union with God is not always sweet. Sometimes it tastes like tears. Sometimes it feels like being stretched between longing and emptiness. Yet within that stretching, love is expanding your heart, making it more spacious, more able to hold both joy and sorrow without breaking. Trust becomes the bridge between your confusion and the mystery of God's ways. Trust does not demand explanations. It does not insist that God justify the path. Trust simply places the weight of the whole being into the hands of the one who knows the way home. It is like resting your head on a pillow you cannot see. The mind may continue to race, the emotions may continue to swirl, but at the deepest level, another choice is made. You choose to believe that God is good even here, even now, even in this long unanswered prayer. There will be moments when this choice feels impossible, when the pain is loud and the silence heavier than stone. In those moments, it is enough to whisper a small yes, even if that yes feels more like a question than an assent. It is enough to say, "Stay with me," even if you cannot sense the one to whom you speak. The very act of turning your heart Godward in the dark is a sign of the Spirit already at work within you. Your longing itself is proof that you have not been abandoned. No one longs for what does not exist. The ache for God is a sign that God is already near. Do not be afraid of your tears in these times. They are a kind of prayer that does not require words. They carry to God the raw truth of your heart, more honestly than any eloquent speech. Let them fall if they must. Let them wash over the unspoken fears, the hidden disappointments, the buried anger you may feel even toward God. The silence is spacious enough to hold all of that. Nothing you bring to the divine heart in sincerity will be rejected. Everything can be taken up, purified, and woven into the fabric of a deeper relationship. Over time, you may look back on these seasons and see that something precious was being given to you in a form you did not at first recognize. You may realize that the silence taught you to cling less to your own understanding and more to God's faithfulness. You may notice that your love has become steadier, less susceptible to being toppled by changing moods or circumstances. You may find that you are able to accompany others in their darkness with a new tenderness, because you have walked there yourself and discovered that God was present even when unseen. In this way, the silent God reveals a paradox. What feels like absence becomes a deeper form of presence. What feels like abandonment becomes a more intimate form of guidance. Instead of leading you by visible signs, God begins to lead you from within, through subtle movements of conscience, through hidden inspirations toward mercy, through a quiet strengthening of your ability to choose what is good even when no one is watching. You start to live less for immediate reassurance and more for the steady gaze of the one who sees in secret. Perhaps you find yourself in a life that looks very ordinary from the outside. You rise, you work, you tend to your tasks and obligations. You return home to the same rooms, the same faces, the same quiet routines. There are no visions, no thunderclaps of revelation. Your days unfold like pages in a simple book, filled with small duties and hidden sacrifices. Holiness is not always wrapped in extraordinary events. More often it takes shape in the patient endurance of unremarkable days, in the choice to love when no one applauds, in the steady faithfulness that persists when the heart feels dull and unnoticed. Think of the hidden years of the holy life that unfolded in Nazareth. Years in which nothing spectacular was recorded. Years of simple labor, shared meals, quiet prayer, and family love. Those years were not wasted. They were the slow building of a foundation upon which the mystery of redemption would later stand. In your own life, there may be many hidden years, many stretches of time that feel spiritually monotonous. But hidden does not mean empty. In the silence of daily repetition, God is forming you, chiseling your character, deepening your capacity to love, teaching you to find the sacred in the ordinary. There will be times when your suffering feels particularly acute, when losses pile up and you feel as though you are being asked to carry more than you can bear. In those moments, the silence of heaven can feel almost cruel. You may look at the crucifix and wonder how such love can coexist with such apparent indifference to your pain. In those hours, remember that the cross does not stand outside your story. It stands at the very center. The one who hangs there remains united to every cry of the heart throughout time. Your anguish has a place within his. Your unanswered questions echo his own agonized cry. The silence you face has already been faced, embraced, and filled with divine presence. When you bring your suffering into that greater mystery, it is not erased, but it is transformed. It becomes part of a larger act of love, a wider river of redemption flowing through history. You may not see exactly how your fidelity in pain touches other lives, but it does. The silent God wastes nothing. The tears you shed in secret, the burdens you bear without recognition, the quiet forgiveness you extend when you would rather close your heart, all of this is gathered into the economy of grace and poured out in ways you will perhaps only understand in eternity. Suffering has a way of stripping away illusions. It shows you how fragile the things of this world are, how quickly health can falter, relationships can strain, plans can crumble. In that vulnerability, you may feel naked before the silent God, unsure of how to stand, unsure of whether you want to stand at all. Do not be ashamed of that fragility. Bring it as it is into prayer. Say with simple honesty, "This is all I have today. This broken heart, this weary body, this confusion and fear." That offering, made without adornment, may be one of the purest prayers you ever raise. There is a kind of listening that only becomes possible when other supports fall away. As long as your life is filled with noise and distraction, the deeper whispers of grace remain muffled. The silent God allows certain props to be removed, not to leave you desolate, but to clear a space within you where something new can be heard. In that cleared space, you may begin to notice a quiet invitation, a call to entrust not only your joys, but also your losses to God. To place in those wounded hands not only your triumphs, but your mistakes, your failures, your disappointments. You may come to know God less as an external problem solver and more as an indwelling presence, a companion at the very center of your being. This presence does not always rearrange your circumstances according to your preference. Instead, it stays with you in whatever unfolds, giving you strength to endure, courage to act, wisdom to discern, and compassion to love. This quiet companionship is deeper than any single answered prayer. It is a communion that remains even when every outward sign disappears. There is also a sacramental depth to this silent journey. In the sacraments, especially in the Eucharistic presence, the silent God takes on a physical nearness that defies explanation. There at the altar, under the most humble of appearances, divinity hides in plain sight. Many sit before this mystery and feel nothing, see nothing, hear nothing. Yet the reality is not determined by the senses. The silent God is there, offering self, pouring out grace in a way that is at once hidden and infinitely generous. When you sit before that presence in your dryness and remain, you are aligning your silence with the silence of God, letting your emptiness rest against the fullness that waits for you. This alignment slowly reshapes you. You become more Eucharistic in your own life, more willing to be broken and shared for others, more willing to let your own presence be a quiet place of refuge for those in need. You learn to carry within you a stillness that does not depend on circumstances. People around you may sense it without knowing exactly what it is. They may feel a little safer in your company, a little more seen, a little more accepted. This is the overflow of the silent work God has been doing in you, the fruit of long hours in which you felt nothing but in which the divine potter was shaping your soul. In dark nights, when you lie awake and the ceiling above you seems to press down like a weight, remember that many hearts across the world are waking and wrestling alongside you. Many eyes stare into the same darkness. Many prayers rise without feeling. The communion of saints is not only a fellowship of the triumphant, it is also a fellowship of the struggling, the doubting, the persevering. When you cannot pray, you can at least unite your silence with theirs. You can say in the secret of your heart, I join my emptiness to the emptiness of countless others, and I place it all before God as a single offering. In this way, your solitary night becomes a shared vigil. You are keeping watch with the whole body of the faithful, even if you never meet them on this side of eternity. Your bed becomes a kind of altar, your room a quiet chapel. Every sigh for relief, every longing for meaning, every plea for the presence of God becomes part of a great tide of yearning that rises and falls with the heartbeat of the world. The silent God receives this tide, holds it, and responds in ways that surpass understanding. If no such consolation comes, if the silence persists unbroken, know that you are not somehow less blessed. You may in fact be sharing a particularly intimate portion of the cross, one that is reserved for those whom God trusts with a deeper participation in the mystery of redemption. This does not make you better than others, nor does it diminish the pain you feel. It simply means that your path, though hidden, is profoundly woven into the heart of the Church, into the ongoing story of divine love poured out in a world still learning how to receive it. If you can do that, if you can continue day by day to offer your small yes in the face of the silent heavens, then the mystery of your life becomes itself a kind of gospel, a living proclamation that God is worthy of love, even when God does not satisfy every expectation. Your quiet perseverance proclaims something the world desperately needs to hear, that love is more than feeling, that fidelity is possible, that grace can sustain a soul through deserts as well as gardens. In this great hush, love moves, as ever-deepening, ever-widening, ever-gentler, radiant love, unbroken river of mercy flowing. Beneath the pain, quietly burning light, in the marrow of the soul, tender strengths holding, the heart in the valley, hidden faithfulness, outlasting every storm, silent companionship, more present than breath, unfailing kindness circling, the wounded spirit patient wisdom, guiding steps through the shadow, unspeakable joy wait beyond the door of night, crucifive, compassion embracing all of the world, unfathomable, ease guarding the depths of the soul, gentle fire purifying desires without destroying them, everlasting arms beneath the weight of your days, steadfast love refusing to let you fall into emptiness, wordless music vibrating in the heart of the silence, hidden springs of living water beneath the desert, mysterious grace knitting, wounds into wisdom, unseen hands supporting, every fragile step, radiant truth shaping you, far beyond perception, ever present, circling you with invisible light, ever deepening, widening, gentle, radiant love, unbroken river of mercy flowing beneath the pain, quietly burning light in the marrow of the soul, tender strengths holding the heart in the valley, hidden faithfulness outlasting every storm, silent companionship more, present than breath, unfailing kindness, circling the wounded spirit, patient wisdom guiding, steps through the shadow, unspeakable joy, waiting beyond the door of night, crucified, compassion embracing, all of the world, unfathomable, peace guarding the depths of the soul, gentle fire purifying desires, without destroying them, everlasting arms beneath a weight off your days, steadfast love refusing to let you fall into emptiness, wordless music vibrating in the heart of the silence, hidden springs of living water beneath the desert, mysterious grace knitting wounds into wisdom, unseen hands supporting every fragile step, radiant truth shaping you far beyond perception, ever-present mercy circling you with invisible light, ever deepening, widening, gentle, radiant love, unbroken river of mercy flowing beneath the pain, quietly burning light in the marrow of the soul, tender strengths holding the heart in the valley, hidden faithfulness outlasting every storm, silent companionship, more present than breath, unfailing kindness, circling the wounded spirit, patient wisdom guiding steps, thought, his shadow unspeakable, joy waiting beyond the door of night, crucified compassion, embracing all of the world, unfathomable, peace guarding the depths of the soul, gentle fire purifying desires without destroying them, everlasting arms beneath the weight of your days, steadfast love refusing to let you fall into emptiness, wordless music vibrating in the heart of the silence, hidden springs of living water beneath the desert, mysterious grace knitting wounds into wisdom, unseen hands supporting every fragile step, radiant truth shaking you far beyond perception, ever-present mercy circling you with a visible light, ever deepening, ever widening, ever gentler, radiant love, unbroken river of mercy flowing beneath the pain, quietly burning light in the marrow of the soul, tender strengths holding the heart in the valley, hidden faithfulness outlasting every storm, silent companionship, more present than breath, unfailing kindness circling the wounded spirit, patient wisdom guiding steps, through the shadow, unspeakable, joy waiting beyond the door of night, crucified compassion embracing all of the world, unfathomable peace guarding the depths of the soul, gentle fire purifying desires without destroying them, everlasting arms beneath the weight of your days, steadfast love refusing to let you fall into emptiness, wordless music vibrating in the heart of the silence, hidden springs of living water beneath the desert, mysterious grace knitting wounds into wisdom, unseen hands supporting every fragile step, radiant truth shaking you far beyond perception, ever-present mercy circling you with invisible light within you now. And so when heaven seems quiet and your heart is tired, remember this: you are being invited into the deep country of faith, the place where trust is purified and love is refined. You are being drawn into the same mystery that shaped the lives of those who went before you, the same night through which they passed on their way to dawn. The God who seems silent is not indifferent. The God who seems hidden is closer than your breathing, nearer than your own pulse. One day, whether in this life or beyond its veil, you will see what was being woven in the dark. You will understand how every unanswered prayer was gathered, how every lonely night of vigil was counted, how every fragile act of trust became a thread in a great tapestry of grace. You will see that you were never walking alone, that the motherly presence, the silent saints, the crucified and risen Lord were all moving with you through every valley. Until that day, walk on. Keep your heart turned toward the quiet presence that surrounds you. Sit in the silence, even when it scares you, and let it shape you. Offer your small acts of faith, your weary prayers, your wordless tears. They are not wasted. They are seeds sown in the soil of God's hidden work. In time, they will bear fruit, perhaps in ways you will only fully understand in eternity. I am Elias, and I tell you this: not because I have mastered the silence, but because I am learning to live within it. I am learning that the stillness of heaven is not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness of a love too vast to be contained in sound. When you stand in that silence, you are standing in the place where God is closest, shaping you, holding you, drawing you ever more deeply into the mystery of a love that does not always speak, but never stops being present.